the current the infrastructure ecosystem
Yep.
isn't designed for self-driving cars. It's hardly designed for any
No, it's
sort of
not.
marriage between bikers driving
Yeah.
cars and walkers.
Yep.
So this is like a fourth element that you're introducing to this, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work great necessarily.
Yeah, and actually, from what we know right now, all these autonomous vehicle systems, they're actually not generalized. And by that we mean is if you train a car to drive in LA and you drop it in London, it's gonna make a ton of mistakes because London streets are very different. There's roundabouts. There's the street markings are different, the buildings are different, the architecture is different. Everything is different about London from a
Yeah.
car's perspective.
Welcome to Practical AI, everybody. My name is Jeff. I'm here with Peter Lynn, and today we are going to talk a little bit about self-driving cars. But first, we're sponsored by Pocket AI. Pocket AI is a tool that is used to model or to prune your models, and you can prune over 60% of the weights of your models without decreasing accuracy, which is pretty cool. You can also find us on Spotify, so look for us in podcast form if interested there. Peter, today we're going to go through this little video that well, it's not little, it's an hour long, well worth the time, and we'll leave it in the discussion box. But essentially, it talks about the technology and advancement of self-driving cars. And I think we may as well just call this episode Our Future Hell. Where are we going with all this AI stuff, and is it really a place we want to go?
Yeah, yep, it's an interesting topic. Um, Definitely watch the video because I think it brings up some really great points that usually when big tech gets their hands on something, they push to transform the policies and the zoning and the roads to match what they want. So if we look at California, when the big auto industry came to California, they got rid of all the public transportation. They purposely bought them and bankrupt them and shut them down.
Like the trolleys and the trams and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, they purposely made all the buses terrible and all that stuff. And as a result, in LA, we have this huge sprawl. Like if you look at the satellite photo of LA, Orange County, like it's a city all the way from the beach, all the way to the summer, mountains.
Yeah.
Because the zoning laws, the road planning, California Transit Authority, just made the rules so that like it was a car paradise. So like the 405 freeway, anyone that lives in California knows the 405 freeway. It's like some parts, it's 8 lanes on each side. So
Yeah.
there's 16 lanes. And on during rush hour, it'll take you 35 minutes to go 10 miles.
Yeah. No, it's pretty common in LA to, if you need to go, it's
Yeah.
hour to hour and a half in your 20-mile radius everywhere, right? Once you're
Yeah.
inside that
Oh, yeah.
box, right? It's hard to
Yeah.
get around. Well, one of the things that I thought was really well done about this video is there are essentially systems that are in place, and we try to manipulate those systems or improve on them or come essentially get to outcomes that we favor or we think we can get to.
Right.
And inevitably, the opposite happens. So, when there was a great story about a little town in South Carolina that, had a beautiful main street, typical main street of a small town, but it was also doubling as a primary thoroughfare for future automobiles and then automobiles. And they were sold by city planners and all this, that if they would basically put a fence up by the road between the
Right.
sidewalk, it would improve
Safety.
pedestrian and safety. And shortly after they did that, and they improved the road and they made it, much more robust and more lanes. Well, it wasn't long before every single business went out of business. So the
Yep.
exact opposite thing happened. And this video sort of makes the claim that whatever they're saying about self-driving cars and how no one's going to need, to worry about where their car's parked and all this stuff, right? It's probably going to produce something way worse than what we're anticipating or what they're selling us.
Yeah, that's so as a tech person, I mean, I love the idea of self-driving cars. And as a cyclist, I love the idea of having cars be safer. But if we look at the history, right, really the companies have their way. They pass the laws they want, they grease the palms of the politicians they want, and they get the roads they want. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. We can have self-driving cars that provides a service, but we don't have to destroy the cities and towns in order to get it. So I think it's in everyone's interest to kind of keep an eye on it and push back when things get too corporate. Like if Tesla says, "Hey, we need to repave all the roads and have dedicated roads just for Tesla," that should be a big no.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that it wisely pointed out is that what we're introducing with these EVs and AVs, I think they call them, these autonomous vehicles,
Yeah.
is this it's it's a bit of a pipe dream, only, well, largely because our current infrastructure, not just the roads and the bridges, but how they're designed, where crosswalks are,
Yeah.
how wide streets are in certain parts of town, like very different in Phoenix than it is in Boston.
Oh
And so
yeah.
when you're trying to kind of lay out a general solution, and the current, the infrastructure ecosystem
Yep.
isn't designed for self-driving cars. It's hardly designed for any
No, it's
sort of
not.
marriage between bikers driving
Yeah.
cars and walkers.
Yep.
So this is like a fourth element that you're introducing to this, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work great necessarily.
Yeah, and actually, from what we know right now, all these autonomous vehicle systems, they're actually not generalized. And by that we mean is if you train a car to drive in LA and you drop it in London, it's gonna make a ton of mistakes because London streets are very different. There's roundabouts. There's the street markings are different. The buildings are different. The architecture is different. Everything is different about London from a
Yeah.
car's perspective. So that means in order to get a car to drive in London, you have to have a fleet of cars in London with human assistance driving for a few years to gather the data for it to learn. And then after a few years, it gets good enough where you can mostly have it drive by itself with some human assistance when it gets stuck. Like the common example from San Francisco and other towns is if the fire department goes to a fire and they park a certain way, oftentimes the vehicles get dumped because they're like, there's this big truck that shouldn't be here. What do I do? And so
Mm.
then I have to dial back home to a human. Human goes, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to drive the car around the fire truck.
Yeah. Well,
And
speaking
then
of generalization too, though, there's like these things are easily like messed with. Like you can literally
yeah,
place an orange cone on the hood of an AV, and
yep,
it's completely paralyzed.
yeah, that's called coning, where you take a traffic cone, you put it on the hood, and it goes dumb.
Yeah, it's like a shut off switch for these things automatically.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. But they also
Yeah,
showed just like it was an EV parking lot where it was 4 in
yeah,
the morning and these cars are driving around trying to figure out how to park when others are coming out, and they
yeah,
basically
yeah,
had
yeah.
this like game of musical chairs going on
Yep. Well, and the people that live right next to it were complaining to the city, saying Google's Waymo cars were honking at 4 a.m. like 3 times this week,
at each other.
and they're pissed. They're like, 4 o'clock, like, I should be sleeping.
I know, I
Why
love
am I
that.
getting woken up?
That was a great story because what was funny is that the Waymo cars were honking at themselves. They're
They
like each
were,
other, right?
yeah,
But then also you have the case where the autonomous vehicle uh, encounters a pedestrian in an unfortunate situation, and she gets run over, and
yeah,
it was trying to stop right in
yeah,
time. But then, since there was no human in the road anymore, it wasn't generalized enough to understand that that human
yeah.
was underneath the car, and then it starts going again and starts dragging her. Now, fortunately, she lived. And we can catastrophize autonomous vehicles, and for sure there's going to be accidents and stuff like that. That's not really the point of this one. I think more it's just interesting that we have a lot of things happening at once, right? We're getting to the safety element, we're getting to the practicality of it, the cost element of it, but
Yeah.
overarching all of this is this the right thing to do? Like, should we be doing this? And what would we need to do in our cities to
Yeah.
completely rethink how we've done urban development and stuff in order to make this even possible? And will this scale out of control? And we'll just have now twice as many cars on the roads because we've made, autonomous vehicles so much more convenient.
Yeah, I mean that's the conundrum is it's a tool and by itself it's not evil. It's the companies that are applying it that do the bad evil thing that screws up a whole town for the sake of their profits. So I mean like I think Europe probably will be leading the way in terms of like how do you actually balance practical use of autonomous vehicles along with mass transit, along with designing cities that will work well with all these different modes of transportation. In the
And
US, we put
most of the European cities were designed around like a horse and buggy.
yeah, well, in walking, like most people, I mean, it's very common in Europe that you don't buy groceries for a whole week. You just buy for a day or two. Because on the way home from work, you stop by a market and you pick up what you need for like that night and the next day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. We've got some figuring out to do here, and
Yeah.
I don't think the planning heads are going to be involved in this. It seems like
Yeah.
This is we're diving into this deep zone, the
Yeah,
deep
yeah.
field right now.
Right, but on a broader scale, if we apply this to language models, some of the things going to happen. Where today it looks really fancy and people think it's generalized, but from the recent papers, they're not really generalized.
Yeah.
And so, we're going to see Sam Altman pushing for his thing. We're going to see him try to convince politicians that, hey, we should pass these laws to protect OpenAI. And he's going to try to enslave humanity, basically.
I think you and I are both in the same camp. We don't trust any of these guys at this point. And let's let the open source world at it, right?
Yeah, because I mean, he's going to do what he's got to do. He's got to raise another $100 billion.
Right. Well, good stuff, Peter. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on self-driving cars. And if I get to see one day, I do plan on coning a Waymo vehicle at some point, see if I can paralyze it. Oh, that might be a felony now at this point, for all we know, right?
Yeah, and they're probably going to pass some law.
Yeah, exactly. All right, good stuff. Remember to catch us on Spotify. Ask us questions in the comments. We'll see if we can answer them for you, and we'll be back with another episode. Take care, everybody.